Well, welcome to Stone Coast today. We've got an exciting message for you. At least I feel excited. Hopefully, you guys survived a nice warm week with some rain at the end. But today, I have an opportunity to talk about one of my favorite Bible stories that I've used over and over again in youth ministry, the story of Zacchaeus. But today we're going to be looking at it from a completely different perspective. We're going to be looking at it from a perspective of a Jesus worldview and a separation worldview. We're going to break down the characters. We're going to talk about the historical context of everything that was happening. And I want to challenge you to try to identify where you would be in the story and how you're carrying out the mission of that story and what that story may be. So, pretty interesting. All of us today live in a completely different world than people did at that time, or I would even say 50 years ago. We live in a world of social media. We live in a world where instant responses happen to anything we do. Our life is somewhat under a microscope. I'll give you a really cool example. The other day, I had an opportunity. I was talking to a friend of mine, Rory, and he loves like stuffed quahogs. So he's talking about these stuffed quahogs that he makes. And apparently what he did was he actually posted his recipe and the process and some new things that he did with his stuffed quahogs. And he put them on like this cooking seafood website. And literally he got 982 comments. And the interesting thing is, they challenged him in a way that was almost offensive about some of the things that he did, almost ridiculing. And, as he's talking about this, Rory is becoming passionate and like, can you believe these people said this? They don't know why I did this. They don't know the whole story. And it's secretly I'm laughing in the background because I'm like, listen, man, I don't care what quahog you make. I'm going to eat it, right? I mean, I'm a chubby guy, so I do like my food and I've worked hard on my physique. So, but to him, those comments after all the hard work almost like separated him out. Like, well, why would I want to share that in the future? Now that's like a little anecdote, and it was kind of fun. But I had an incident the other night where I went to Fenway Park. A buddy of mine gave my family tickets, these beautiful tickets overlooking the field. So my two sons and my wife and myself went to Fenway Park, and we go up there, and there's a moment before the game starts that I'm looking at the field, and I'm just taking in this picturesque look of the field, and my wife is with my sons, and she's getting them drinks. Well, all of a sudden, the man standing next to her, speaking to one of his friends, looks over at me, I guess, and says, "See that guy right there? He's a racist." And my wife looks around and sees this, and that he's pointing directly at me. There's no one else overlooking the field. And she says, "Excuse me, why would you say that about my husband?" And the person was flabbergasted that anyone even heard him, and it ended there. And but then my wife waited about a half hour, and then she said, "Chuck, while you were standing watching the field, someone made a comment about you," and she explained the whole thing and the interaction. And I said, "Hun, why didn't you tell me at the time?" And she goes, "Because I know what you would have done." And I said, "Well, yeah, of course." She goes, "Yeah, you would have gone over there. You would have talked to him. You probably would have hugged him, and you would have just had this whole conversation." And that's not his attitude. His attitude was not about that. And so I have to kind of explain the backdrop of it, right? When I started talking a few minutes ago, I said we live in a world of instant interactions, of social media. We live in a separated world. We live in a world where everyone is separated. And it seems like whether it's politics, whether it's gender, whether it's, you name it, list your list of things that you could you could separate out. So what you don't know about me, or you might know, is I'm a history teacher, and I have this love for U.S. history. I love the Constitution. I love the Founding Fathers. I love the story of the Revolution. And I love the Bill of Rights. So one of the shirts, I was walking through Bass Pro Shops, and I love a shirt called the Grunt style shirt. So you get the American flags, you get a couple muskets on the side, and it says 1776, this we will protect. Well, the shirt I found, because I love the Constitution, had Second Amendment written across it with an eagle. And thinking, now I'm thinking from the view like, I love this shirt. I'm a history teacher. I love the Constitution. I'm not thinking anything political. I'm not thinking any agenda. I'm not thinking gun rights. I'm not thinking anything. I'm thinking, I love this shirt, right? So when we were going to Fenway Park the other night, when you have a favorite shirt, sometimes you put it on when you're going somewhere, you want to look good. So I wear this shirt. And the reality is, though, in our culture, everything is left, right, center, whatever it is, but there is this divide. And when we see people, we see the adjectives of what is written on their shirts or what they look like. And that's kind of a separation worldview, right? We take it at face value. We say, not at face value, we take it as what it says, and we say that person is this person is this. And it creates a separation. If you've ever been accused in life, or you've been falsely accused, or maybe rightly accused, whatever it is, or maybe someone knows something about you, so they kind of put that on you, right? What does it do? Does it drive you closer to them, or does it pull you apart from them? And that's what we're going to be talking today about, the story of Zacchaeus. Now, I want you, as I go through this, I'm going to break this down almost like you're in English class. I'm going to break down the story of Zacchaeus and the scripture, Luke 19, 1 through 10. I'm going to read through it, and we're going to talk about 3 different parts of this. We're going to talk about the characters, we're going to talk about the setting, and we're going to talk about the implication of this. Whenever I would teach this story to my youth groups or in youth ministry, I would always take it from the perspective of Zacchaeus just wanting this relationship with God and running to God, right? So, and that's a beautiful picture for people to see, let's just run to God, no matter what we've done. Today, we're going to look at it from a worldview of what the crowd, which we can be part of, views it, what Jesus views it at, and Zacchaeus. So I'm going to read this now. This comes from the New King James Version. So it starts with Luke 19:1. Then Jesus entered and passed through Jericho. Now behold, there was a man named Zacchaeus, who was a chief tax collector, and he was rich. And he sought to see who Jesus was, but could not because of the crowd. Because of the crowd. I want to repeat that. For he was of short stature. So he ran ahead, and he climbed a sycamore tree to see him, for he was going to pass that way. And when Jesus came to the place, he looked up and he saw him. And he said to him, Zacchaeus, make haste and come down, for today I must stay at your house. So he made haste and he came down and received him joyfully. But when they say they, it's the crowd, saw it, they all complained, saying, he has gone to be the guest with a man who is a sinner. Then Zacchaeus stood and said to the Lord, look, Lord, I give half of my goods to the poor, and if I have taken anything from anyone by false accusation, I restore it fourfold. And Jesus said to him, today salvation has come to this house, because he also is a son of Abraham. For the Son of Man has come to seek and save that which was lost. So as we read through this, I want you to get in the mind frame that, who am I? Are you Zacchaeus? Are you the crowd? Or are you representing Christ? Right? I can say firmly in my life I have been all three. And so let's just kind of look at that. So first I'm going to start with Zacchaeus. Zacchaeus is the center of this story. He's the subject of this story. As we read through this, we start hearing the adjectives of who he is. He's the chief tax collector in Jericho. And I want you to understand what that means. Let me also add, he's wealthy. So he's the chief tax collector and he's wealthy. Put that in perspective. And understand that if you are the chief tax collector in a place like Jericho, that means there's other tax collectors underneath you that are working for you. Your responsibility is to assess the tax that has been laid on Jericho from the Roman Empire. And that's going to be key because the Romans in this, they are not Jewish. They control the land. They are the rulers. They are the oppressors. So they control Jericho. They control Israel. And if you are Jewish, these are your natural enemies. So Zacchaeus, Jesus says he is a son of Abraham. He's Jewish. So Zacchaeus works for the Romans to collect taxes, hard-earned money that has been earned, who has been worked for, from his own people. In essence, this is saying he is a betrayer of the crowd. He is a betrayer of the people of Jericho. Now, it also says that he's a wealthy man. So where does his wealth come from? The Romans weren't paying him to collect taxes. They were backing him up. If someone doesn't pay taxes, they would enforce his tax collection. But what Zacchaeus did, and all tax collectors, and it was an agreement, is they would collect a percentage above the tax that was to be paid to the Romans. And that's how they gained their wealth. That's how they got paid. That was their hard-earned money. Now, if the crowd is seeing him as a wealthy man who is also betraying his people, they're understanding that his wealth is coming from that percentage that is being collected above the tax, which is going to cause resentment. So now he's collecting taxes for the enemy. He's a betrayer of his people. He's growing wealthy from that betrayal. And those are all the adjectives and who Zacchaeus is. Now, I want you to understand that as you go through that, right, they call him a sinner. So that is his sin that the people, are putting on him. So Zacchaeus hears of this Jesus, and his heart, he wants to know more. He wants to understand. This is Jesus, and we're going to get deeper into who that is and what that means. But he's in this position. He wants, he desires. In fact, so much so, he climbs a tree, right? I'm sure Zacchaeus didn't feel great about himself. He knows what his community, a community that he was most likely raised in, sees him as, describes him as, accuses him of. So he feels probably down on himself. The crowd sees him as not only, there's so many, it's so interesting. Some people call him a wee little man. Other people say, well, his stature, his person is looked down upon. So that's what they were talking about. Either way, it doesn't matter. He climbs a tree so he can see above the crowd because the crowd is separating him from Jesus. So that's the only way he can see, but he desires to see Jesus so much and hear him. He's willing to climb a tree, right? Which you think of a wealthy man climbing a tree just to see Jesus, but he's separated from a crowd. Now we're going to go into the crowd. I want you to think about, we know who Zacchaeus is. Now let's look at the crowd. The crowd is from the city of Jericho. Jericho is at this time a wealthy city. It's on the Jordan River. It's not only that, it's known as an oasis. It's got a thousands of years history because it was an oasis for traders early in its history and then into the future, and it's still thriving. It had springs of living water coming up, which caused it to be an oasis where people could come and they would trade and they would do all those things. And then it grew into a trading city. And at this time, Jericho is prosperous, it's wealthy, it has a large population, it's on the banks of the Jordan. And the crowd who is here are the people from Jericho, right? They same place that Zacchaeus is from. So this crowd is going to be quite large. And any crowd that we can break it up. There's going to be people who are followers of Jesus in that crowd. There's going to be those people who have heard his message, who have said, hey, you know what? I am going to follow this Jesus. He's healing people. He's preaching a mission of salvation. I'm going to follow him. So there's followers of Jesus. There's seekers as well. There's people who are in there who have heard who Jesus is, what he's teaching, but they're not sure. They're kind of like, is this guy for real? Could this be the Messiah that has been prophesied? Are the miracles real? Is his message, does it make sense biblically or according to the Torah? So there's going to be seekers who are there and they're curious and they're thinking of committing their life to this message. And then there's going to be also, a key group that are going to be the scoffers who are going to be like, I just want to see what this guy's about. I think this is crazy. This is just another person who's coming through saying all these things. And they're going to be in that crowd too. So that's that crowd. That's the setting. That's the city. And we're finding it's a wealthy city, a trading city, a lot of work, a lot of population. So when we talk about Nicodemus and the work that he has, he's known by everyone. And not Nicodemus, I'm sorry, Zacchaeus. He's known by everyone and probably angered a lot of people. And then finally we have Jesus, right? He is the Son of Man. He is preaching salvation. He is the Son of God. And if I go through this, if I go to 1 John as I'm describing who Jesus is, John writes, "My dear children, I write this to you so that you will not sin. But if anyone does sin, we have an advocate with the Father, Jesus Christ, the righteous one. He is the atoning sacrifice for our sins, and not only for ours, but also for the sins of the whole world." So that's Jesus, right? That is that context you need to understand. That's the Jesus that's walking through Jericho that Zacchaeus wants to see, that the crowd wants to see. That is the Jesus that a lot of us have chosen to follow today, 2025 years later. He's the one who's healing the sick, making the blind see, and the crowd is following him. So those are the three things. Now, let's delve into how the crowd sees Zacchaeus. The crowd sees Zacchaeus as a sinner. He is separated. So remember I talked about that separation worldview that we live in, where whether it's on social media, wherever in your life, you pick it. There's that view that, that person does this, that person does that person does this. We're going to judge that person, right? So you have that crowd. They're in that. And you have a situation where Jesus is coming through. And Jesus, the roads are dirt, it's dry, it's dusty. There's a dust above the crowd. There's a large crowd. They're following Jesus. And Jesus walks by this sycamore tree. And above, you got Jesus in one place, you got the crowd, and then you got the sycamore tree. The crowd, quite literally, is separating Zacchaeus from Jesus. And they're clamoring to hear him, a message personally for them, but they're acting in separation. Zacchaeus truly feels the accusations, the adjectives, the words that he's described as a betrayer, a tax collector, a wealthy man, a man who was taken from his own people, working for the oppressors. He knows he has no part in that crowd. In fact, so much so he had to climb a tree just to see. The dust is rising above the crowd. Zacchaeus is in the sycamore tree. Jesus is at the other end. And Jesus sees Zacchaeus. Now, I just spoke to you about the adjectives that describe Zacchaeus from the perspective of the crowd. Zacchaeus' name means something. Quite literally, Zacchaeus' name means the innocent one, the pure one. So when Jesus looks across the top of the crowd and sees Zacchaeus, when he calls him out and says, Zacchaeus, he's quite literally saying, the pure one, the innocent one, I see you. He's not calling him betrayer, sinner, tax collector. No, he's saying, innocent one, pure one, I see you. See, Jesus sees his creation. When he looks at us, when he looks at others, yes, does he have knowledge that we have sin? Of course. Does it change the fact that there's right and wrong? No. But the Jesus worldview sees who we are, the creation, who he loves. And he sees our potential, our purity, who we are at the base. You know, as we walk through the streets, as we see people online, as we see people in our community, it's very easy to say and to look at their appearance physically and say, wow, how did that homeless person get there? How did that drug addict get there? How did that prostitute get there? How did that, wealthy person who seems to have ripped people off get there? That's the separation worldview, right? But then Jesus sees those same people, and he sees his creation, and he sees their potential, and he sees their purity, and he cuts through everything. And so imagine in that moment, Jesus says to Zacchaeus, come, Zacchaeus, tonight I'm going to eat at your house. I'm going to eat. We have to go eat at your house. And imagine that crowd that separates Jesus from Zacchaeus. They literally part. I don't know if they did or not. It doesn't matter because Jesus could see, but see an opening and a pathway, and see Zacchaeus coming to Jesus. Now, there's something powerful here. He says, I'm going to go dine with you. I'm going to go eat with you. I'm going to eat in your house. And think about how important communing with someone is in that culture, and even in our culture. When we're in church, when we have communion, we're breaking bread with Christ, with each other, in communion, in agreement with each other. In this moment, the crowd isn't losing that. That's a sacred thing that Jesus is going to go to Zacchaeus' house, the sinner, what the world sees as a sinner, what Jesus sees as an innocent, pure person. And he's going to break bread with him. This is scandalous, right? He's going to go and he's going to do this. The challenge here of this whole message comes down to this. If we separate people from Jesus, what are we doing? If we're who are we in that crowd when we're judging people? When we're saying that person can't come to our church because they have A, B, and C, and you can name whatever A, B, and C you want. There's still right and wrong. That's there. Sin exists in all of us. That's not the point. The point is, as a follower of Christ in that crowd, who are you and what agent of change are you? Because you can be the one that pushes Zacchaeus further away from Christ. by recognizing all their sins and accusing them of all those sins. Or you can be the one who opens up that pathway in the crowd and welcomes them to Christ. Now, Jesus intentionally invites himself into Zacchaeus' house. Jesus invites himself into the life of Zacchaeus. He invites himself into the life of the sinner. Right? You think about that. He goes into his house. That's powerful. That's a call for us. So who are we? Are we bringing Christ into our homes, into our lives? Are we bringing people that we may not agree with to our dinner table? Who are we choosing to eat with at our table? Are we pushing them out the door, or are we bringing them in to commune? That's a challenge for every single one of us, for all of you. I would hope that you get the chance to just examine this and ask yourself, who am I in that crowd? Am I bringing Zacchaeus to commune with Christ, or am I pushing him further out? And Zacchaeus is everyone. See, when you allow that person, that Zacchaeus, to come commune with Christ and to guide them to Christ without seeing them the way the world sees them, but seeing them the way Jesus sees them, as the innocent and pure one, you're allowing Christ to do his work so that Christ can bring the Holy Spirit into their heart and can open up what they need to work on. But if you become the judge and the jury of Zacchaeus, and you push Zacchaeus further away, you are never allowing God to do his work. I can guarantee you that when Jesus sat down with Zacchaeus, there was a life change and a heart change because the power of Jesus, of the Holy Spirit, went through.